Part 1. The arrival, the diplomatic shuttle landed on the throne world of the Volturi Dominion with a soft hiss of steam. The planet was called Zeth Prime, and it was the heart of an empire that stretched across 100 star systems. The Valkyrie had conquered dozens of species. They had burned worlds and enslaved billions. They feared nothing in the galaxy. Ambassador Elena Morozova stepped out of the shuttle and breathed in the alien air. It smelled like copper and ash. She was a small woman, old and thin, with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She walked with a wooden cane that looked ancient and hand-carved. Her eyes were dark and deep, like wells that had no bottom. The Valkyrie guards who greeted her were tall and frightening. They stood over 8 feet high, with hard shells covering their bodies like armor. Their faces had too many eyes and mouths that clicked when they spoke. They looked at Elena the way a wolf looks at a rabbit. "You are the human ambassador?" one of them asked. His translator made his words sound flat and cold. "I am," Elena said. She smiled at him. It was not a warm smile. The guards led her through the massive halls of the royal palace. The ceilings were so high that clouds formed near the top. The walls were made of black stone that seemed to eat the light. Everywhere Elena looked, she saw trophies from conquered worlds. Flags of fallen nations. Weapons taken from dead enemies. Skulls of species that no longer existed. Elena walked slowly, tapping her cane on the stone floor. The sound echoed through the empty halls. Click, click, like bones, rattling together. One of the guards walked close to her. "You walk like an old woman," he said with contempt in his voice. Elena looked up at him. For just a moment, something moved in her eyes. Something ancient and hungry. The guard felt cold suddenly, even though the palace was warm. "I am old," Elena said simply. "Older than you can imagine." They reached the throne room after a long walk. The doors were made of metal that had been melted and shaped to show scenes of Valkyrie victory. Dead aliens. Burning cities. The great kings of the past standing over their fallen enemies. The doors opened, and Elena walked inside. King Zethulan sat on a throne made of crystal and bone. He was the largest Valkyrie Elena had ever seen, nearly 10 feet tall. His shell was black as night, decorated with gold and jewels. His many eyes watched Elena as she approached, studying her like she was an insect. The throne room was filled with nobles and advisors. They whispered to each other as Elena walked past. A human, such a small, weak thing. What was she doing here? What could she possibly offer the mighty Valkyrie? Elena stopped at the bottom of the steps that led to the throne. She did not bow. This made the nobles gasp. Everyone bowed to King Zethulan. Everyone. "You do not kneel," the king said. His voice was deep and terrible, like stones grinding together. "I am too old to kneel," Elena replied. "My bones would not like it." The king leaned forward. His eyes narrowed with interest. "You are brave for something so fragile. Or perhaps you are simply stupid." "Perhaps," Elena agreed. She did not seem afraid at all that one of the king's advisors stepped forward. He was a thin Valkyrie with a nervous way of moving. "Great king, this human claims to speak for all of Earth. She wishes to discuss a treaty of non-aggression." The king made a sound that might have been laughter. "Non-aggression? Why would I agree to such a thing? Humanity has nothing I want. Your species is young and weak. You have been in space for only a few hundred years. We have ruled for millennia." Elena nodded slowly. "That is true. We are young. But young things grow, King Zethulan. And sometimes, young things have old friends." Something in her voice made the room go quiet. Several of the nobles felt a strange chill run down their spines. One advisor's ceremonial blade, hanging at his side, suddenly cracked down the middle for no reason at all. He stared at it in confusion and fear. The king noticed none of this. He was too focused on Elena herself. There was something about her that interested him. She was not like other diplomats he had met. They had been afraid. They had begged. This old woman stood before him like she was the one in power. "Your shuttle," the king said suddenly. My sensors found it strange. They could not fully scan it. Why is that? Elena's smile grew wider. It is old. Like me. Old things do not always follow the rules. What do you call it? Elena tilted her head. I call it my little chicken-legged house. An old joke from my homeland. The king did not understand the reference. None of the Valkyrie did. But somewhere in the computer archives, buried deep in files about human mythology, an alarm began to blink. A name appeared on a screen that no one was watching. A warning that no one would read until it was too late. Baba Yaga, class unknown. Threat, level, do not engage. King Zethulan dismissed the human request for a treaty. He told Elena that he would think about it, but his voice made it clear that he had no intention of agreeing. Humanity was not worth his time, but as he watched Elena leave the throne room, something stirred in his cold heart. Not fear exactly, more like hunger. This strange old woman knew things. He could see it in her eyes. Ancient knowledge. Secrets that might be useful to him. He called his advisor close and whispered in his ear. The human woman interests me. Make sure she does not leave this planet alive. But first, find out what she knows. The advisor bowed and hurried away to make the arrangements. Elena walked back through the dark halls of the palace, her cane clicking on the stone floor. She knew what was coming. She could smell it in the air. Treachery, violence, death. She had smelled it many times before. On many worlds, across many centuries, the Valkyrie thought they were hunters. They thought Elena was prey. They did not know that the old woman walking among them was something from humanity's oldest nightmares. Something that had protected her people since before they had words to describe her. They did not know that they had just made the worst mistake of their long. Bloody History. Elena reached her guest quarters and closed the door. In the darkness, her eyes began to glow like dying embers. The shadows in the room moved toward her, gathering around her like faithful dogs. Foolish children, she whispered to herself. They always have to learn the hard way. Outside her door, the first assassin was already waiting. Part 2. The betrayal. The first assassination attempt came during dinner. The Valkyrie had prepared a great feast to honor their human guest. Long tables were covered with strange foods from 100 conquered worlds. Alien nobles sat in rows, eating and drinking, and watching Elena with hungry eyes. Elena sat near the head of the table, close to King Zethulan himself. A Valkyrie servant poured dark wine into her cup. The wine smelled sweet, like honey and flowers. It also smelled like poison, the kind that would stop a heart in seconds. Elena lifted the cup to her lips. The nobles watched closely, trying to hide their excitement. The king pretended not to care, but his many eyes kept drifting back to her. Elena drank. The nobles waited for her to fall. 1 second. 2 seconds. 5 seconds. Elena set down her cup and smiled. Excellent tea, she said. It reminds me of home. The king's advisor looked into her cup. The dark wine had become something else entirely. Black tea, steaming hot, with a slice of lemon floating on top. Impossible. The poison had been tested. It could kill anything. The advisor said nothing. He simply signaled for the second attempt. Later that night, Elena walked alone through the palace gardens. The gardens were filled with plants from dead worlds, the last of their kind. They glowed softly in the darkness, beautiful and sad. Elena touched their leaves gently as she passed, whispering words in a language that no Valkyrie had ever heard. 3 assassins dropped from the trees above her. They were the king's best killers, fast and silent. Their vibroblades hummed with deadly energy as they swung at the old woman. Elena did not move. She did not even turn around. The assassins found themselves striking at empty air. Their blades had changed in their hands. Where there had been deadly weapons, there were now chicken bones. Old and dry and useless, the assassins stared at the bones in confusion. Then they looked up at Elena. She had turned to face them now. Her eyes glowed red in the darkness. Her shadow stretched out behind her, but it was wrong somehow. It had too many arms, too many legs, things that might have been teeth. "Little hunters," Elena said softly, "did your king not teach you? You should never hunt something stronger than yourself." The assassins tried to run. They did not get far. The shadows wrapped around them like hungry snakes. Their screams were short and terrible. In the morning, 3 iron nails were found in the garden. Nothing else remained of the king's best killers. The 3rd attempt was the most direct. A Valkyrie commander led Elena to an airlock, claiming there was something she needed to see outside the palace. When she stepped inside, he sealed the door and hit the release button. The outer door should have opened. Elena should have been sucked into the cold vacuum of space. She should have died in seconds, but the door did not open. The commander hit the button again and again. Nothing happened. The airlock controls began displaying strange symbols. They looked like letters, but they were from no language the commander had ever seen. They seemed to crawl across the screen like living things. Inside the airlock, Elena knocked on the inner door. "Is there a problem?" she called. Her voice was calm and almost amused. The commander fled. King Zethelwyn received the news of each failure with growing anger. He summoned his advisors to his private chambers and demanded answers. How could one old human woman survive poison, blades, and the vacuum of space? "Perhaps she is not human," one advisor suggested nervously. "Perhaps she is some kind of machine or weapon." "She is flesh and blood," another said. "Our scanners confirmed it." "Then explain what is happening." The king roared. His voice shook the walls. No one could explain. The king decided to handle the matter himself. He summoned Elena to a private audience in his chambers. When she arrived, he dismissed all his guards. He wanted no witnesses for what was about to happen. Elena walked into the room slowly, her cane clicking on the floor. She looked around at the king's private collection. Weapons from fallen enemies, crowns from dead rulers, a necklace made from the teeth of a species he had personally destroyed. "You have beautiful things," Elena said, "all taken from the dead." "I take what I want," the king replied. He rose from his seat and towered over her. "You are a spy, a soldier disguised as a diplomat. Humanity has sent you to destroy me." Elena laughed. It was not a normal laugh. It sounded like wind blowing through dead trees on a winter night. It made the king's shell crawl with unease. "Little king," she said, "I am no soldier. I am something much older. Something your ancestors knew well. They called my kind by many names. The ones who live in the dark places. The watchers at the edge of the firelight. The things that eat bad children." The king's many eyes went wide. Deep in his memory, in the stories his mother had told him as a child, something stirred. Tales of creatures from the void between stars. Beings of impossible power that existed before the Valkyrie had learned to walk upright. "Impossible," he whispered. "Call your guards," Elena suggested. Her smile showed too many teeth now. "See what happens." The king shouted for his royal guard. 20 of his best warriors burst through the door, weapons raised. They surrounded the old woman, ready to tear her apart at their king's command. "Seize her," the king ordered. The guards moved forward. The lights went out. In the darkness, something moved. Something that was not Elena anymore. Something with joints that bent the wrong way and eyes that burned like hot coals. The guards screamed. The sound of breaking shells filled the room. Things crunched and snapped and fell. When the lights returned, Elena stood alone in the center of the room. The guards were gone. All 20 of them. Only their weapons remained, scattered across the floor. But they were not weapons anymore. They were iron nails, old and rusty and driven deep into the stone. King Zethulan fell backward onto his throne. For the first time in his long life, he felt true fear. Elena walked toward him slowly. Her shadow moved behind her like a living thing, stretching and twisting in ways that made no sense. Her eyes still glowed with that terrible red light. "You tried to kill me," she said. Her voice echoed strangely, as if many voices were speaking at once. That was foolish, but I might have forgiven it. Many have tried to kill me over the centuries. She stopped at the base of his throne and looked up at him. But you threaten my people, the humans, the children of Earth. They are young and foolish and sometimes cruel. But they are mine. I have protected them since they lived in caves and feared the darkness. I will protect them until the last star burns out. The king could not speak. His throat was frozen with terror. Elena turned and walked toward the door. Before she left, she looked back over her shoulder. I am giving you one chance, little king. One chance to do the right thing. Think carefully about your next move. Then she was gone, vanishing into the shadows of the corridor. The king sat on his throne for a long time, staring at the iron nails on his floor. He was afraid, yes, but he was also angry. No one threatened him. No one made him feel small. He would find a way to destroy this creature. Whatever it took. He had just declared war on something he did not understand. Part 3. The Huntline had disappeared that night. She walked out of her guest quarters and into the depths of the palace. The guards who tried to follow her found only empty corridors and locked doors. Their tracking devices showed nothing. Their sensors picked up only static. By morning, the old woman was gone, vanished into the labyrinth beneath the throne world. King Zethulan stood at the edge of the great pit that led down into the lower levels. No one went down there anymore. The tunnels were old, built by civilizations the Volturi had conquered long ago. They stretched for thousands of miles in every direction. Dark places filled with forgotten machines and the bones of dead species. Find her, the king commanded. Bring her to me alive if possible. If not, bring me proof of her death. He sent his elite hunters into the darkness. 12 of them, the best killers in the entire Dominion. They had hunted creatures across 100 worlds. They had never failed. The hunters descended into the pit with confidence. Their weapons hummed with power. Their armor was the strongest in the galaxy. They moved through the dark tunnels like ghosts, silent and deadly. For the first day, they found nothing. Only dust and shadows and the crumbling remains of ancient cities. The air grew colder as they went deeper. Their breath turned to mist. Frost began to form on their armor. On the second day, they found the first sign of Elena. A small fire burned in an empty chamber, crackling softly. Beside it sat a pot of soup, still warm, smelling of herbs and meat. A wooden spoon rested against the side. The hunters searched the area but found no one. Just the fire and the soup and the lingering smell of smoke. "She's playing with us," the lead hunter growled. "Spread out. Cover more ground." They split into pairs and continued deeper into the tunnels. That was their first mistake. The communicators began picking up strange signals on the third day. At first, it sounded like static. Then it became something else. A voice. An old woman singing. The words were in a human language, but the melody was wrong somehow. It twisted and turned in ways that made the hunters feel sick. Then the voice began speaking directly to them. "Little hunters in the dark," it said, "looking for the house with chicken legs. Knock, knock on the door of bone. Turn around. Go back. Before the oven grows hungry." The hunters did not go back. They were not afraid of old women or strange songs. They pushed deeper into the tunnels. The first pair of hunters disappeared without a sound. Their communicators simply went dead. When the others reached their last known position, they found only weapons transformed into iron nails and 2 pairs of empty boots. The second pair was found by the third. They were still alive, but changed. They sat in a circle of strange symbols drawn in white chalk, unable to move, unable to speak. Their eyes had turned white and blind. When the other hunters tried to pull them out of the circle, their hands passed right through them, as if they were made of mist. The surviving hunters tried to retreat. They ran through the tunnels, racing back toward the surface. But the tunnels had changed. Passages that had been open were now closed. New corridors appeared where there had been solid walls. The hunters became lost in a maze that seemed to shift and breathe around them. More hunters vanished. Some were taken by shadows that moved on their own. Some walked through doors and never came out the other side. Some simply stopped existing, erased from reality like they had never been born. Only one hunter made it back to the surface. His name was Korath. He had been a proud warrior once, decorated with honors from a dozen campaigns. Now he crawled out of the pit on his hands and knees, his armor cracked, his weapons gone. His eyes had turned completely white. The guards brought him before King Zethulan. The king looked at his ruined hunter with disgust and fear. "What happened down there?" the king demanded. "Where are the others?" Korath opened his mouth. When he spoke, his voice was not his own. It was old and female and full of terrible amusement. "The king wishes to know what happened? I will tell him. His hunters came into my house uninvited. Such bad manners. I taught them better. Some I kept. Some I let go. This one I returned with a message." The king leaned forward, his many eyes burning with rage. "What message?" Korath's blind eyes stared at nothing. His mouth moved, but the words belonged to something else. "The witch Baba Yaga has claimed the dark places. She has always lived there, in every shadow, on every world. You cannot find her. You cannot catch her. You cannot kill her. She is as old as fear itself." The king slammed his fist against his throne. "I do not believe in witches. I do not believe in human superstition." Korath began to laugh. It was Elena's laugh, cold and terrible. "Belief does not matter, little king. The fire burns whether you believe in it or not. The darkness is hungry whether you believe in it or not. And Baba Yaga is waiting, whether you believe in her or not." Korath collapsed. The voice was gone. He lay on the floor, breathing but empty, his mind burned away by whatever he had seen in the depths. The king sat in silence for a long time. His advisors watched him nervously. They had never seen him so troubled. Finally, the king stood. "Flood the lower levels with plasma fire. Burn everything. If she is down there, she will die. Nothing survives plasma." His advisors bowed and hurried to obey. The plasma generators activated. Rivers of fire poured into the tunnels beneath the palace, hot enough to melt stone, to vaporize steel, to destroy anything and everything. The fire went down into the darkness. It did not come back. The generator showed that the plasma was flowing, but no heat returned. No light escaped. The tunnels swallowed the fire like a hungry mouth swallowing food. Then the cold began. It crept up from below, through the floors, through the walls. Ice formed on the windows of the palace. Guards shivered at their posts. The temperature dropped and dropped and dropped until pipes burst and water froze and breath became clouds of frost. And from somewhere deep below, rising up through the ice and the silence, came the smell of cooking fires and iron, the smell of an old woman's cottage, the smell of something ancient and patient and terribly hungry. King Zethelwan sat on his frozen throne and realized that he had made a terrible mistake. He had tried to hunt something that could not be hunted. He had tried to kill something that could not be killed. And now that something was coming for him, the palace lights flickered once, twice. Then they went out entirely in the darkness. Something began to climb. Part 4. The reckoning Elena rose from the depths like a nightmare given flesh. She walked through the frozen corridors of the palace, and reality bent around her with every step. The walls twisted when she passed. The floors rippled like water. Lights flickered and died, only to be replaced by the soft glow of her burning eyes. She was not hiding anymore. She was not pretending. The first guards who saw her ran. They did not know why at first. Their bodies simply refused to stand and fight. Ancient instincts buried deep in their minds screamed at them to flee from this thing. This creature that wore the shape of an old woman. Those who did not run quickly enough learned why the others had fled. One guard raised his plasma rifle and fired. The blast of superheated energy should have vaporized anything it touched. But Elena simply lifted her hand, and the fire gathered in her palm like a captive star. She looked at it for a moment, almost curious. Then she closed her fingers, and the fire became something else. Fireflies. Dozens of tiny glowing insects that drifted away into the darkness. Beautiful, Elena said softly, but not useful. She gestured at the guard, and his armor began to rust. The process happened in seconds. 100 years of decay compressed into heartbeats. The guard screamed as his protection crumbled around him. Then the years touched his body too, and he aged and withered and fell to dust before he could draw another breath. Elena walked on. Word spread through the palace, like fire through dry grass. Something terrible was coming, something that could not be stopped. Guards abandoned their posts. Nobles fled to their ships. Servants hid in closets and prayed to gods they had not believed in for centuries. Doors locked themselves when Elena approached, but locks meant nothing to her. She touched the metal, and it remembered when it was ore in the ground. The doors dissolved into rust and dust. She walked through walls that suddenly forgot they were solid. She climbed stairs that appeared just for her, vanished behind her. The palace itself seemed afraid of her. Stones cracked as she passed. Ancient pillars crumbled. The great windows shattered into snow. Elena found the king's generals in the war room. There were 5 of them, the greatest military minds in the Valtteri Dominion. They had conquered worlds. They had destroyed civilizations. They had killed billions without remorse. Now they huddled behind their tactical table like frightened children. Surrounded by weapons that could crack moons. When Elena walked through the door, they opened fire. Everything they had. Plasma cannons. Disintegration rays. Gravity weapons that could crush battleships. The room filled with fire and light and destruction. The walls melted. The ceiling collapsed. The floor turned to glass. When the smoke cleared, Elena stood in the center of the ruined room, untouched. Not a single hair on her head was disturbed. Her old dress was not even dusty. The general stared in horror. "You poor fools," Elena said. There was no anger in her voice, only pity. "You still think this is a fight? You still think you have a chance?" She walked toward them slowly. Her shadow stretched out behind her, impossibly long, filled with shapes that hurt to look at. The generals backed away until they hit the wall. "What are you?" one of them whispered. Elena tilted her head, considering the question. "I am the darkness outside the campfire. I am the sound in the forest at night. I am the thing that taught your ancestors to be afraid. I have many names on many worlds. But the one I like best is the one my children gave me." She smiled, and her teeth were too sharp. "Too many. They call me Baba Yaga." The generals began to scream. Minutes later, Elena stepped over 5 piles of iron nails and continued toward the throne room. She found King Zethelin waiting for her. He sat on his frozen throne, surrounded by the last of his royal guards. 50 warriors, each one prepared to die for their king. Their weapons pointed at the door as Elena walked through. The king looked different now. The arrogance was gone from his eyes. He had seen the reports. He knew what had happened to his palace, his guards, his generals. He knew there was nothing he could do to stop the creature that walked toward him, but he was still a king, and kings do not beg. "So," he said, his voice steady despite his fear, "you have come to kill me." Elena stopped at the bottom of the steps. She looked up at him, and for a moment she almost looked human again. Just a tired old woman with sad eyes. "I did not come here to kill anyone," she said. "I came here to talk, to sign a treaty, to build peace between your people and mine." "Then why?" the king asked. "Why all of this?" "Because you gave me no choice." Elena's voice hardened. "You tried to murder me before I could speak. You sent assassins. You sent hunters. You tried to burn me with fire and freeze me with cold. I gave you chances to stop. Many chances. You refused." She began to climb the steps. The guards raised their weapons, but they did not fire. Something in Elena's eyes told them it would be pointless. "I have protected humanity for 10,000 years, Elena continued. "I watched them discover fire. I watched them build their first cities. I watched them reach for the stars. They are young and foolish, and sometimes cruel. They make mistakes. They hurt each other. They disappoint me often." She reached the top of the steps and stood before the king. "But they are mine, my children, my responsibility, and I will never let anyone harm them while I exist." The king met her burning eyes. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand," Elena said. "I want you to feel, truly feel, what you almost did. You almost started a war with humanity. You almost sent your fleets to burn their worlds. You almost killed billions of innocent people because you thought they were weak, because you thought there was no one to stop you." She leaned closer, and her breath was cold as winter. "There is always someone to stop you. There is always something in the darkness that protects the innocent. You forgot that. Your ancestors knew it once, but you forgot." The king trembled. "How do you know what my ancestors knew?" Elena smiled sadly. "Because I taught them. Long ago, before the Valkyrie had a written language, I walked among them. I taught them to fear the darkness, to respect the unknown, to be humble before forces they could not understand. But empires make people forget. Power makes people blind." She stepped back and spread her arms. "So I am here to remind you. I am here to make you remember." The ice on the walls cracked and fell. The cold began to retreat, but the fear in the room remained. "Tomorrow we will sign the treaty," Elena said. "You will leave humanity alone. You will spread the word to every empire, every kingdom, every species in this galaxy. You will tell them that the children of Earth are protected, that something old and powerful watches over them." The king nodded slowly. He had no more fight left in him. "And if anyone ignores your warning?" he asked weakly. Elena turned and walked toward the door. Just before she left, she looked back over her shoulder. "Then I will remind them too. As many times as it takes. For as long as it takes." She disappeared into the shadows. The king sat on his throne for a long time, staring at the darkness where she had been. His guards slowly lowered their weapons. No one spoke. No one knew what to say. Outside the palace, the sun began to rise. But King Zethawulan knew that the night would never truly end for him. Not anymore. He had looked into the eyes of Baba Yaga and seen the truth. There were worse things in the universe than empires. Part 5. The treaty, the signing ceremony took place in the great hall of the palace. The walls had been repaired overnight, or at least covered so that the damage was not visible. New windows had been installed to replace the ones that had shattered. Fresh guards stood at every door, trying to look brave, but everyone could still smell the rust and ash. Everyone could still feel the cold that had seeped into the stones. The palace remembered what had happened, and so did everyone in it. King Zethawulan sat on his throne, surrounded by his surviving advisors. They were fewer now than before. Many had fled during the night. Some had simply vanished. The king tried to look powerful and in control, but his eyes were tired, and his hands shook when he thought no one was watching. Elena walked into the hall alone. She looked like a normal human again, small and old and harmless. Her wooden cane clicked on the floor with each step. Her gray hair was pulled back in its neat bun. Only her eyes gave her away, dark and deep, holding shadows that moved on their own. She carried a simple leather bag over her shoulder. Inside were the documents that would change the future of two civilizations. The nobles and officials who filled the hall watched her in terrified silence. They had heard the stories. They had seen the iron mails and the piles of rust that used to be weapons and guards. They knew what this old woman really was. Elena stopped before the throne and smiled up at the king. It was almost a kind smile. "Good morning, Your Majesty," she said. "I hope you slept well." The king had not slept at all. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw burning red lights in the darkness. "Let us finish this," he said hoarsely. Elena nodded and pulled the treaty documents from her bag. They were simple papers, written in both human English and Valkyrie script. The terms were fair. More than fair. Humanity asked for very little: peace between the two species. Trade agreements. A promise not to invade each other's space. Mutual respect and cooperation. Nothing that would hurt the Valkyrie Dominion. Nothing that would take away their power or their wealth. The king's advisors read every word carefully, looking for tricks or traps. They found none. This was exactly what it appeared to be. A simple treaty of peace. Why? The king asked as he picked up his pen. "You could demand anything. You have shown me that you have the power to destroy my entire empire. Why ask for so little?" Elena looked at him thoughtfully. "Because destruction is easy. Any fool can burn things down. Building is harder. Peace is harder. I did not come here to conquer you, King Zethawulan. I came here to protect my people. That is all I have ever wanted." She paused, and something old and sad passed through her eyes. "I have lived for a very long time. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species evolve and go extinct. I have learned that violence creates nothing lasting. Only fear and hatred and more violence. The Valkyrie are a great people. You have built amazing things. I would rather be your friend than your enemy." The king stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he signed his name at the bottom of the treaty. Elena signed below him. Her signature looked strange, written in letters that seemed to shift and change when you were not looking directly at them. "There is one more thing," Elena said. She pulled out a separate piece of paper. "A personal clause that I wish to add. Call it my own guarantee." The king took the paper and read it. The words were written in ink that seemed to glow faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. "The Dominion shall not harm the children of Earth, nor suffer them to be harmed. For they are under the protection of the Old One. This covenant shall last until the last star fades and the darkness reclaims all." The king swallowed hard. "And if we break this covenant?" Elena smiled, and for just a moment her teeth looked too sharp again. "Then I will come back. as many times as necessary. And each time, I will be less patient than before." The king signed the additional clause without another word. It was done. The treaty was complete. Peace had been achieved. Elena gathered the documents and placed them carefully back in her bag. Then she bowed to the king, a small, polite gesture that somehow felt more frightening than anything else she had done. "It has been interesting meeting you, King Zephyolon," she said. "I hope we do not have to meet again under these circumstances." She turned and walked toward the door. The crowd parted before her like water before a ship. No one wanted to be close to her. No one wanted to draw her attention. At the door, she stopped and turned back to face the hall. "I have one last thing to say," she announced. Her voice was soft, but it carried to every corner of the room. "I am old, very old, and I am tired of fighting. I have fought monsters and gods and empires. I have stood against the darkness in 1,000 different forms. All I want now is peace. For myself. For my children. For everyone." She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of every noble, every official, every guard. "Spread the word to the other empires. Tell them about humanity. Tell them about me. Tell them that the stars are big enough for all of us if we choose to share them. But also tell them this." Her eyes began to glow, just slightly, just enough to remind everyone what she really was. "The children of Earth are under my protection. If anyone threatens them, if anyone hurts them, if anyone tries to take what is theirs, I will know. I will always know. And I will come, no matter how far they run, no matter how well they hide. I will find them." She smiled, and it was the smile of a grandmother looking at her beloved family. "Tell them Baba Yaga is watching. And she never sleeps." Then she was gone. The hall erupted in whispers and frightened chatter. The king sat on his throne, staring at the door where Elena had disappeared. He felt older than he had ever felt before. Wiser, too, in a terrible way. He called his communications officer forward. "Send messages to every empire we have contact with. Tell them about the treaty. Tell them about the human woman. Tell them everything." "What should we say, Majesty?" the officer asked nervously. The king thought for a long moment. "Tell them that humanity has an ally. Something old and powerful that exists outside the normal rules of the universe. Tell them that attacking Earth would be suicide. Tell them that the wise choice is peace." The officer bowed and hurried away. In the following months, the Volturi Dominion became the galaxy's most enthusiastic advocate for human rights. They warned every species they met about the witch who walked among the stars. They told the stories of what had happened in the palace. They made sure everyone understood. Humanity is not alone. Humanity is protected. Humanity is loved by something ancient and terrible and beautiful. The other empires listened. Some laughed at first. Some did not believe. But then the story spread, and more witnesses came forward, and the evidence became impossible to ignore. Species that had been planning to conquer Earth quietly abandoned their plans. Warlords who had spoken of burning human worlds went silent. The galaxy learned to leave humanity alone, and humanity never knew why. They did not know that an old woman had saved them. They did not know that she had always been there, hiding in their stories, living in their dreams, watching over them since the beginning. They thought they were alone in the universe, small and vulnerable and unprotected. They were wronged up far away, on a small ship shaped like a wooden cottage with impossible chicken legs. Elena Morozova sat by a warm fire and stirred a pot of soup. She looked out at the stars through her frost-covered window and smiled. Her children were safe. For now, for a while, but she would keep watching. She would always keep watching, because that is what mothers do. Even the ancient ones, even the terrible ones. Even the ones who live in houses that walk and talk to shadows and turn bad kings into lessons. Baba Yaga was home. And she was happy. The end.